I'm Tina Fordham, and this is a special edition of the Navigator. I am excited to share the highlights of our latest research with you today. Spoiler alert, we've confirmed the existence of what we call the Geopolitics Supercycle, meaning a documented systemic increase in the rate of geopolitical risk events. I wanted to look at this question because it's the #1 question we are asked by global business leaders, usually in the context of when will all of this go away so that things go back to normal? But if you want to develop geopolitical resilience in your organization, understanding whether a change is structural or cyclical is crucial. Until now, this input into business strategy just hasn't been available. The structural versus cyclical point means the difference between thinking tactically versus thinking strategically about change. And so many conversations in boardrooms and XComs right now are about exactly this. How real is the increase in geopolitical risk, and how likely is it to last? But before we dig in, how did we get here? Not so long ago, geopolitics was considered to be not much more than a tail risk, meaning high impact but low probability events with a less than 10% probability of actually happening. But those days are long gone. Starting in 2022, following the Russia-Ukraine war, a majority of CEOs started citing geopolitics as a top risk to their businesses for the first time. By 2025, 62% of CEOs identified geopolitical instability as the biggest risk to global growth, and 86% stated that they were prepared to take action to address it. But that got me thinking, what if geopolitical risk is a bit like sex in high school? Everyone's talking about it, but nobody really knows how it's done. Before we go any further, we need to define our terms. In my 25 years as a geopolitical strategist, I've observed a common misperception about what geopolitical risk is. Most people use the term interchangeably with news and current affairs, but that's not the case. And if you can't manage what you can't measure, how can you develop organizational resilience to something that you aren't describing accurately? So let's define geopolitics. In international relations terms, geopolitics is what states do to project power beyond their borders, whether that's conflict, espionage or propaganda, cyber attacks, gray zone operations, or tools of economic statecraft like sanctions or tariffs. In short, geopolitics is about power. It's been around forever, but slowed down over the past 50 years by the post-World War II settlement and rapid global integration. But it never went away. So how has geopolitical risk been tracked up until now? Well, it's complicated because it's very difficult to find the data, and the phenomenon is not very well defined theoretically. There are established databases, of course, on interest rates and inflation and currency fluctuations, but we simply don't have this for geopolitical risk. And this has impeded efforts to quantify it. As a result, it often gets treated in risk models as a negative externality or just left out. Previous efforts have utilized either expert assessments or tracked news flow, like the well-known US Federal Reserve's GPR index. This monitors the number of news articles about geopolitical events from 10 newspaper sources, and it's probably the best known resource by market participants. We decided to see if we could build a better research mousetrap, so we devised a proprietary conceptual framework to test our hypothesis, capturing the critical drivers of geopolitical risk, and then tracking the frequency of risk events across 4 categories: trade, cyber, conflict, and unrest. Our approach is empirical, based on open source data and grounded in political science theory and expertise. The period we surveyed was between 2010 and 2024, spanning the global financial crisis, the pandemic, and the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. What we found was eye-opening. Our findings confirmed that over the past 15 years, the geopolitics supercycle has indeed intensified, starting from a comparatively low point during the global financial crisis, but then increasing threefold by the end of 2024, with over 3,000 risk events materializing. This is a systemic increase. Cyber attacks saw the most significant uptick, while trade disputes increased tenfold, and the number of wars doubled. Remember, this is the period prior to the second Trump administration and the Liberation Day tariffs. So what do the findings mean for the future? Well, first and foremost, without guardrails like diplomacy and the rule of law, we would expect to see geopolitical risk events increase further. And some of these could move from regional to systemic. That means becoming asset price or growth shocks. Is there any room for optimism? There's always room for optimism. The factor I'll be watching most closely from here that could be a counterweight to the risk outlook is the shape of new coalitions of the willing and avenues of global cooperation, as well as evaluating how existing alliances hold up under pressure or maybe get reorganized. For those of you interested in more regular reporting on the frequency and nature of geopolitical risk events, we'll also be using our framework to create a quarterly geopolitical risk tracker, so watch this space. Thanks for watching and for your interest in geopolitics, and remember the words of Louis Pasteur, fortune favors the brave and chance favors the prepared mind.